Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. I have Lauren Walczak with me, who is our product manager. And disclaimer, this is a recorded webinar today, so you will not see the live chat, and that is perfectly fine because we have a very accessible email, hello@hrforhealth.com. If you have any questions throughout the webinar today and want to ask them, you still can. We're still here from you. But sometimes we just have to record ahead of time. And that's what we're doing for today's webinar titled, Your Employee is Pregnant, Now What? Better Understand HR laws around leave, accommodations, and PWFA. And as exciting as pregnancy can be for your employee, it's often scary as an employer to figure out what do you do next, what are the right steps to take, and what will keep you compliant. But before we get into all of that really fun stuff, I'm going to introduce Lauren and give you a little bit of background so you can understand who's the face behind the screen today and why she is up here presenting this. She began her career with HR for Health almost 8 years ago as an HR specialist, and she quickly developed an interest in problem solving through our software. Eventually, she became the operations manager, and in this role, she recognized the difficulties of managing employees without the right tools. And now, as our product manager, she is part of the team that continually innovates and updates our software to be the best that it can be and the best software for healthcare and dental practices. And she has a huge background in HR and is the perfect person to talk about pregnant people because that is the thing we're talking about today. And she has kids of her own, and that's why she is so enthusiastic and excited to talk about this. But before we do, I'm going to give you a quick rundown of what we're going to go over today. And that is, we're going to understand some of the laws, which we're going to get the boring stuff out of the way first. Then we're going to tell you what are the next steps to take. And then, of course, we have to tell you how our HR software is a great solution for this predicament and how scary this can be and how easy we make it. And then we're going to end on a conclusion on how you can contact us and where you can reach out, or you can ask us what you should be doing next because some situations are different than others. And lastly, let me tell you about HR for Health, just in case you haven't met us before. We are HR for Health, and our mission is to simplify HR processes and make them less stressful for businesses of all sizes. We bring to the table a combination of HR expertise and technologically advanced solutions. So those were like a bunch of big words to say that we make a very user-friendly HR software for healthcare and dental practices of any size without any number of locations, and we try to make it user-friendly without a bunch of frivolous settings and different, oh my God, I can't even think of the name, different settings and user functions that a lot of the other softwares have that you just don't need or you wouldn't get a lot of use out of. And we pride ourselves on being reasonable and always being available to you whenever you have questions. And so with that, we're going to get into some fun stuff about pregnant workers and understanding some of those laws. So I'm going to let Lauren take over.
Awesome. Thank you, Taylor. Yes, passionate about this since I have been pregnant myself, have an empathetic heart for pregnant employees. But we're going to go over some of the laws, like Taylor mentioned, what you need to keep in mind if you do have an employee that's pregnant. Even if you don't, the chances that you might within your career are pretty high. So you want to make sure that you know how to handle each of those situations as they come up. So first of all, this came into effect last year, the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act. So this is in place to make sure that you're giving accommodations to your pregnant employees based on what their needs are. So we'll go over some of those examples and what that might look like in your practice. There's also the Pregnancy Disability Act or Discrimination Act, and that ensures that you're not discriminating against, obviously harassing or anything like that because an employee is pregnant, maybe they have a disability from childbirth, anything that's related to the pregnancy that could be medical condition or any of those things. We just want to make sure that you're not treating them any differently, not doing anything differently in your hiring process, promotions, giving them any different benefits. We want to make sure that that's all even for all employees, especially if they are pregnant or have a disability based on their pregnancy. So we'll go into a little bit more detail, but high level, definitely scan this QR code, has a lot of good information on the PWFA is the abbreviation that I might say throughout this, so I'm sorry if I do. But definitely scan that, make sure you have it. If you have any issues with it, let us know and we'll send it to you as well. Okay, so this went into effect on June 27th of last year. So as I mentioned, it makes sure that you're providing reasonable accommodation to workers based on their limitations. It is technically applicable for 15 or more employees, but we'll go through some of these examples. They're not anything too crazy. If the employee has a doctor's note, you should be providing these either way. So hopefully you don't see the 15 plus and think, oh no, I'm good. Another thing to keep in mind is a lot of states have their own rules as well, which we'll go into a little bit more. So this is just the federal rule, so it applies to every employer that has 15 or more, but a lot of states and cities have their own requirements as well. And then undue hardship. So technically you don't have to give a reasonable accommodation if it causes an undue hardship for your business. This is very, very hard to prove that it's an undue hardship. It has to be a significant difficulty or expense. And a lot of people will see that and say, oh, I don't have to do it because it's a hardship on my practice. But it has to be very extreme. So if you do want to claim that, I would highly recommend talking to our team if you're a client, or reach out to an HR specialist or an employment attorney if that's the case for you. Okay, so a couple examples of what a reasonable accommodation might look like. So pretty standard, being able to sit or drink water, receiving closer parking, having flexible hours, receiving appropriately sized uniforms and safety apparel, making sure that they have extra break time if needed to go to the bathroom, eat and rest, taking leave or time off to recover from childbirth, and being excused from strenuous activities and or exposure to chemicals not safe for pregnancy. So obviously this will vary from practice to practice, employee to employee. You can request a doctor's note for these. So actually I recommend, so you have that documentation in place. The doctor will clearly state what they can and cannot do. So then you have that documentation in place there as well. Okay, so then what can employers not do? So you cannot require an employee to accept an accommodation without discussing it with them first. So you want to make sure that you are, it's called the interactive process. So you want to make sure that you're discussing what their job duties are, what they can and cannot do, and then coming to an agreement together on that. You don't want to just say, oh, here's your accommodation and that's what it is. It is an interactive process. You also don't want to deny a job or other opportunities based on promotions or anything like that because of their need for reasonable accommodation. So you just want to treat them like you would any other employee based on their skills, based on their experience. And then require an employee to take leave if another reasonable accommodation can be provided. So if you can keep the employee working, then that's best case scenario. You should figure out how to do that before you just require them to go on leave. So maybe that's a different position that you have in the office. Maybe it's just different job duties, whatever it might be. Make sure that you're having that conversation with the employee. And then of course, we don't want to retaliate against an individual for reporting unlawful discrimination. So if they're saying, hey, I feel discriminated against, we don't want to retaliate or do anything negatively for that, because that can look very bad as well. So we want to avoid all of these things, but hopefully that's pretty easy to do. Okay, so a couple of questions. So as I mentioned, there's 30 cities and states that have their own protections and regulations in place. So you want to make sure that on top of the Pregnancy Workers Fairness Act, you know what your state's rules are as well. Another thing to keep in mind is another trend that's coming up is adding reproductive loss leave. So states are requiring employers to give time off if they have a miscarriage or any type of loss during the pregnancy. There's also a lot of states that have family leave, so keep that in mind, and then parental leave as well. So not even for the employee that's pregnant, but if there is a partner that recently has a new baby, adoption, all of those things, parental leave is part of that as well. So just make sure that you know what your state's requirements are. Obviously, feel free to reach out if you have any questions on yours, and we can help you with that as well. And then what if you have 50 or more employees and have to offer FMLA? So FMLA is Family Medical Leave Act. So that provides unpaid leave for specific employees that qualify so that they can take time off and bond with their new child. So you would still have to offer that as well, even with the PWFA. It's a tongue twister. So just keep in mind that it is still applicable if you have 50 or more employees. And again, on top of that, keep in mind FMLA is federal. Some states have their own regulations on top of that as well. So the states make it nice and fun. Just make sure you're aware of what your rules are. And then I just wanted to give a quick visual of the lifetime of a pregnant employee. So you'll have the pregnancy accommodations that we just talked about. So if they need different job duties, more rest breaks, all of those that we've discussed. Next is pregnancy disability leave. So if they can't perform their job duties at all and they need to go on leave, maybe it's a month before their due date because they physically, especially in a healthcare practice, can't stand that long, and then recovering from childbirth. So that would be the whole pregnancy disability leave. And then, as I mentioned, in some states, there's paid family leave as well. So that's baby bonding time with the child. And then even once they return, there are protections federally for lactation accommodation. So providing them a separate space where they can pump or do whatever they need to do in order to provide that milk for their baby. So we want to make sure that they have a private space with a lock, ideally. It cannot be a bathroom stall, so just keep that in mind for when the employee returns. You do need to provide them with that space as well. Okay, so next steps. What does that mean in your practice? So the first thing is you want to make sure that you're training any of your managers, supervisors, whoever it might be that's dealing with your employees about the laws that they need to comply with. So what accommodations that they need to make, what are the leave laws in your state or city, just making sure that they know that there's they can't obviously, we hope no one's harassing, but no harassment, you can't discriminate against, making sure that they know everything that they need to abide to. The next one is documentation. So there are different things that you want to make sure that they have, including notices when they're a new hire, outlining what their rights are. You want to make sure that you have a handbook in place that outlines all of their rights as well with specific policies based on your state. So if your state has family leave, you should have a policy on that. If your state has pregnancy disability leave, you should have a policy on that. Any necessary posters for your practice as well, again, based on your state. And then you also, in terms of documentation, want to make sure that you have the doctor's notes on file. You want to clearly outline their time off, when they're going to be returning, and have them sign off on that as well, so everyone's clear and knows when they're going to be out and when they're returning. So common questions, even though this is pre-recorded, we did have a couple common questions that we see with our clients that come up. So hopefully this is a situation you've dealt with and you want to know the answer to. Again, if not, reach out to us and we're happy to answer those for you. So the first one is, what if my employee wants to come back from leave part-time? So let's say they have finished their pregnancy leave and now they're ready to return, but they say that they only want to work part-time, but before they were full-time. So you have to give them the same position and job duties that they were before they left. But if they are the ones choosing to have fewer hours or a different position when they return, then it's at your discretion to approve that or not. So if they were full-time and they came back and you offer them part-time, you can't do that. But if they're full-time and they came back and they requested part-time, then it's up to your discretion if you want to approve that and you value the employee, you want them to return, or you can say, unfortunately, it's a full-time position, we need to have you full-time. Let me also clarify, is if there's a medical reason that they can only be part-time, then that's different. They can have a doctor's note and you most likely would have to accommodate that. But if it's purely just because they want to work fewer hours, then that's at your discretion. The next one is, do I have to pay for my employee's health insurance while they're on leave? So the employee still is required to pay for their portion of the health insurance while they're on leave. Obviously, you can choose to pay for that if you would like to, but a lot of times employers will just ask them to pay it up front, or you can have them pay monthly via check whatever works out for both parties, but the employee does need to pay for their portion. Okay, the next one is I was planning on firing my employee and she just told me she's pregnant. Now what? And I'm so sorry if you can hear gardeners outside. So this does come up a lot, unfortunately, where it's a trouble employee. Maybe they've had performance issues for months, and you were working towards the termination process, but then they told you they're pregnant. A pregnant employee does become a very risky termination. Even if you have that documentation in place, it's still very risky. We always recommend speaking to legal counsel just to make sure that you have all of your bases covered, and we can refer you to our partner law firm for that. But it does get very risky. I would suggest just continue to keep that documentation up. So if they have violations or any of those things, just make sure that you're continuing to keep record of those things, especially performance related. You just want to make sure it's not for a discriminatory reason. So that's why it can get very risky, because the employee could easily say, oh, you fired me because I'm pregnant and not because of performance. So high risk, highly unadvised, but an attorney can walk you through those steps. And then the next one is, can I hire a temporary employee to fill in while they're out on leave? And of course, you have to keep your business running. You need to make sure that your patients are seen. So you can hire a temporary employee. One thing to keep in mind there is you should, in your offer letter for a temp employee, specifically outline that it's a temp employee and that they're replacing someone that's out on leave. You want to include the estimated return date. So again, that's why you need to have that date from the employee before they leave as well. And then the temporary employee doesn't think that it's a full-time employment and that's permanent position. They know that it ends on X date, and then it doesn't seem like you're just terminating them on that date. So again, just want to make sure you have that clear documentation no matter what. How many times can we say documentation? We love documentation. Okay, awesome. So HR software. So how can a software help you with all of these different things? So streamlined compliance, we want you to stay up to date with all the different laws that are coming in, especially because this is becoming much more of a trend amongst the states. So we do update you within the software of any new laws that are coming up in your state, so you know exactly what's happening and when. We do also update your handbook policies appropriately. So if there's a new pregnancy leave in your state, then you're going to have a policy in your handbook for it. Same with lactation accommodations, same with the family leave, all of those things. And then the same also with our new hire documents. We make sure that there's the appropriate pamphlets for your state, and the employee is specifically getting that information so they know that what their rights are if they do become pregnant or if they need family leave, all of those things. And then most importantly, at least to me, maybe not most importantly, but one of my favorite things is tracking the leave management in a system. So making sure that all of their doctor's appointments are in a time off tracker, making sure that all of their leave is documented and clearly shown when they're going to be out, because it could get confusing if they say, oh, I actually was going to come back on this date, but you thought they were coming back this date. You just want to make sure that that's clearly outlined. And I'll show you our time off request, so that makes it as simple as possible. We also have messaging, so if you need to discuss any of those things with the employee, then you could do that there, so it's all in one place. Okay, cool. So let's actually just dive into the lovely software. So this is one of our tester accounts. To start off, I'm going to go ahead and show you what the time off would look like. So the employee can go into their time off section. They can click request time off and add in any of their doctor's appointments, any of their maternity leave, whatever it might be. So here you can see that Annie Smith has a sick leave request on February 19th for 2 hours. So maybe it's just in the morning and she just needs a couple hours for that doctor's appointment. And then you can see her maternity leave is from March 1st to June 30th. So again, this just helps because even if you forget, because there's so many dates to keep track of, like when is Annie coming back again? And you can check this and see that she's returning on I guess this would be July 1st. So you know she's out until June 30th. So that's easy for you, even for your sanity, you can easily come and see this. And then I also just wanted to give a high-level overview of how you can see this from our employee scheduler. It's new, so if you haven't checked it out yet, go ahead and check it out. But for Annie on Monday, since she had the 2-hour doctor's appointment, you can see that she's specifically out from 8 to 10. And then she has a shift from 8 to 5. So you can also easily manage coverage. So if you need to find someone to cover for her 8 to 10 slot, you can. You can move her shift to an open shift, and then someone can say, oh, I can pick that up. So it just gives you, again, more visibility, and then the team knows when she's out as well. And then if we want to go to March 1st, when her leave starts, you can see all the time off. And then she'll be marked as time off until she returns from leave. Again, just giving that visibility so that you know, okay, she's obviously on leave. You probably won't forget it, but at least you have an easy reference here as well. And then just another note, the rest of the employees in the office can see this, but they can't click on it and see any reason. So all they'll see is time off. They won't see any personal details from here. And then just another quick tip for our clients, if you guys haven't done this yet, you can actually approve time off directly from the schedule as well. So if you click this little manage icon, then you can approve it there. And then from a high level, I know I mentioned new hire documents. So our new hire checklist is going to automatically have all the documents that you need for your specific state. I know it looks overwhelming. Some are for employees, some are for independent contractors, some are for both. This is California, and they have the most documents out of everyone. But you can see here that they have a specific pregnant employee pamphlet. So a lot of states have a pamphlet like this that you have to provide to your employees. When an employee is added to HR for Health, they're going to automatically get sent all of these forms, and then they can reference back to it if they ever needed to. So if they have questions on what their rights are in your specific state, they can go here. And then you can also, in the employee handbook, I'll just show you what that looks like really quickly. So these are all of my policies, again, based on my state, how many employees I have. So if I wanted to see like, oh, which policies have pregnancy included in it, you can easily see all of those here. So again, this is California, so you can see pregnancy, disability, reproductive loss leave, California family and medical leave, lactation accommodations. So we are always making sure that these are updated for you. If you have this toggle on, it's going to automatically update your handbook and send it out to your employees when there's a new policy. So again, just a lot of different things to keep in mind with pregnancy, especially with the handbook. So this will just make your life a little bit easier there. And then I mentioned law updates, so I wanted to go over that briefly as well. So we have our little resource center here, and then law updates are here. This will be based on your specific state. So anytime that there's something new that's applicable to your state, we'll give you an update here with a brief summary of what it is and how it applies to you. And then, of course, if you ever have questions, you can reach out to our HR specialists, and they're happy to walk you through it as well. Awesome. Well, that is what I wanted to show you in the software. Okay, awesome. Well, that's what I wanted to show you in the software. So with that, I will kick it back to you, Taylor.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Lauren. And that is it for our webinar today. Short, sweet, simple, but you might have a lot of complex questions after this, and we understand. And so we want you to go to our website if you have any questions about our software. You can call us, or you can send an email to hello@hrforhealth.com. Please reach out to us. We will answer you. No question is a stupid question. Please ask, and we want to help you make sure you stay compliant, but also to respect your employees, because it's a hard time and it can get complicated, but you don't have to risk compliance over it. So thank you, Lauren, for everything today. Please reach out to us, and we look forward to seeing you soon. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.